Now, I won't lie, when I first found out that Colin Kaepernick was sitting in protest of the national anthem, I said, oh, here we go. This chode doesn't get it. He just doesn't get it. And it wasn't even necessarily in direct reference to sitting down during the national anthem. It was more so the fact that I've always viewed him as kind of being a selfish, kind of me-first type of guy. Fair or not, that's the way he's always presented himself to me. That's kind of the aura that he emanates, in my opinion. And I thought this would be a very selfish move. A selfish move that took away from the team. And at the end of the day, when you're a National Football League player, your responsibility is to yourself, granted, but also to your team. And at a time where you're in the preseason and you're trying to get yourself ready for the regular season under a new head coach, and you're not even your team's starting quarterback, mind you, doing something like this, you have to know the type of attention it's going to bring. That it can be viewed as a very selfish decision. In a lot of ways it is. And it could be an incredible distraction to the team because instead of talking about the upcoming season, instead of putting all the energy and effort and focus on the team's play on the football field and their work on the practice field and in the meeting rooms, we're going to be talking about Colin Kaepernick sitting during the national anthem. And teammates and coaches are going to have to sit there and answer questions, not about what's being done on the practice field or in the meeting rooms or on the field during preseason games. They're ultimately going to be answering questions about this. It could be an incredible distraction. An incredible distraction. And in some ways can be viewed as a very selfish maneuver by, in my opinion, sometimes a very selfish guy in Colin Kaepernick. Furthermore, when you look at it from a national anthem type of standpoint, the one thing, when you talk about sitting down during that anthem, you'll get those idiots like Tom Brenneman and others talking about all these soldiers that are fighting for our freedoms. What fucking freedoms are they currently fighting for? The answer is none. Shut the fuck up. But when you talk about not wanting to stand up during the national anthem because of the problems in society today, in particular when you're talking about police brutality that disproportionately affects young black males, which is a legitimate problem, you also have to remember that there are many black soldiers that died fighting for and protecting that flag, many of whom died for a country that did not love them, died for a country where they went over and in some cases killed other colored peoples to come back home and be viewed as a second-class citizen because they were indeed a colored person as well. And to me, you can look at it in one sense and say that him sitting down during the national anthem disrespects all of those black soldiers that fought for and died for that flag for a country that frankly doesn't love them, never has, and still doesn't, and I don't know if it ever fully truly will. On top of all of that, I look at Colin Kaepernick kind of from a snarky kind of, smart-ass perspective, and I say, hey, you want to take a stand on anything, how about you play better? I mean, let's call it as we see it. This dude is losing out on the starting job to Blaine Gabbert. Let that sink in for a second. The dude has regressed so much and progressed so little over the past couple of years without Harbaugh there to kind of hold his damn hand that he can't even beat out Blaine Gabbert for the starting quarterback job of a crappy San Francisco 49ers team. If Colin Kaepernick, on the one hand, wants to take a stand on anything and wants to put his effort towards anything, why don't you be better at your job? Because at the end of the day, the amount of impact that your stand can have, the amount of power that your voice can carry, is directly in some ways related to your performance on the field, in your profession. You look at somebody like Colin Kaepernick, dude can't even start for his NFL team. A lot of people aren't going to take what he says very seriously. Fair or not, doesn't matter if he brings up fair points. If you can't be better at your job and you can't at least be the starting quarterback, knowing what comes with being a starting quarterback and that people naturally gravitate to you and pay attention to you, then why the hell are you worried about all this other crap? Be better at your job first, then everything else can fall into place. Then you can worry about everything else. When a LeBron James and a Dwayne Wade and a Chris Paul and a Carmelo Anthony sit there at the ESPYs and they do their whole little speech talking about the gun violence needs to stop and the inequity in the treatment of young black males by police officers needs to stop and all of this, they have a right to sit there and say that, yes, but furthermore, when they say it, people are actually going to take notice. on a positive way because these guys are some of the best at what they do. LeBron James is arguably the best player in the world currently and one of the truly all-time greats. When a LeBron James says something, it means more than if a freaking scrub like Swaggy P says it. Oh, y'all might love Swaggy P. We know it's true. Muhammad Ali, when he made his big stand in the 60s and in the 70s, it meant more because he was Muhammad fucking Ali. And he was arguably the greatest boxer of all time. Jim Brown, legendary woman beater, but also a legendary crusader when it comes to civil rights and different things. It meant more because it was Jim Brown, one of the greatest football players of all time. Part of the disappointment for many people when it came to Michael Jordan over the years and his lack of willingness to take a stand on political or potentially divisive issues was the fact that perhaps more than any person in history, up to and including Barack Obama, Michael Jordan had the ultimate outlet as a black male in this country and around the world to affect as much positive change as anybody. And again, I will emphasize anybody. And more often than not, he stood silent. He did nothing. Because at the end of the day, Republicans buy sneakers too. But if a Michael Jordan said something, it means so much more because he was Michael Jordan. It's like when he finally said something about the police violence and talking about young black men killing each other and how it all needs to stop and this is getting carried away. This is why the world went fucking crazy because Michael Jordan actually took a stand and he said something that meant something for once. But if Michael Jordan was Randy Brown, nobody'd care. Nobody'd care. And at the end of the day, you know, while we live in a sensationalistic media environment and during the preseason, they gave the media something to talk about to stem the tide until the regular season games started. And that's part of the reason we're talking about it. Frankly, that's part of the reason why I'm even here talking about it in a video. At the end of the day, it really doesn't matter if Kaepernick isn't better at his job. However, with that said, and all that other stuff kind of put out there, and I stand by everything I just said, I'm also going to stand by what I'm about to say. Because on so many different levels, I understand Kaepernick's protest, and I agree with Kaepernick's protest, and will defend not only his right to make this protest, but the reasons for which he is making this protest, because they're valid. You're talking about a country here, when we talk about the flag, a country that was built on slave labor, a country that was also built largely on the backs of oppressing another colored peoples in terms of the Native Americans, who were ritualistically slaughtered, moved from their lands, which they had first, because of manifest destiny and a bunch of other bullshit, Trail of Tears and all this other garbage, so that way we could store them on reservations. That's what this country's history is. You have to understand that. It doesn't just get painted away with a white brush immediately, as much as white America likes to try and paint it away with their white brush. This is a country built on slave labor and the oppression and murder of non-European colored peoples. This is a country that counted blacks when it was formed as less than human. Less than human. What, 3/5 of a person or some crap like that? Counted them as property. It took 100 years and a civil war to kind of, sort of, get blacks equal rights, and which it really didn't happen. It took another 100 years for those legal protections to actually put in place to where they meant something when you talk about the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act and what have you in the 1960s. And even then, we still have to wonder whether that really has truly made a difference, and I argue that it really hasn't. When you look at income inequality, when you look at the disparity in education quality between primarily white neighborhoods and primarily black neighborhoods, when you look at inequities in the criminal justice system, when you look at the inequities in terms of police treatment of white versus non-white offenders, it doesn't just carry over to young black males, even though they are more disproportionately affected than any other group. It's not just them. You talk about police brutality and racial profiling and killings by police. These are all real substantive issues. And you've got so many people that want to sit there, especially in white America, and try to make it seem like it's better than it is by saying, well, we've gotten a lot better. We've got some work to do, but it's not going to happen overnight. But we're a better country than we were. What the fuck is that saying? That's like saying, hey, this person's a murderer. This guy shot a couple of people, but he didn't end up killing anybody. He's better. Yeah, technically he's better. He didn't actually kill somebody. But if he could have, he would have. He tried to. He wanted to. He's an attempted murderer. How much fucking better is it really? It's like on a scale of 0 to 100 when you're talking about grading a term paper, let's say, or grading a homework assignment. The U.S. for many years was a 0. Then it was a 10, a 20, a 30, a 40. Maybe now we're in the 50s, low 60s. It's still a D or an F, depending on how you want to look at it. We're so much better. Okay, well, what the fuck does that mean? We're still failing. And we are failing. And it's encouraging for me to see when athletes like a Colin Kaepernick, along with others, start talking about these issues and bringing them to light. They're understanding there is a responsibility, fair or not, that comes along with being a black athlete in this country. And it's nice to see athletes that choose to embrace that because it helps. It, at the end of the day, is not going to be some great agent of immediate change, but it can bring issues to light and maybe eventually get white America to care enough about it to where things will actually change. When you look at what Kaepernick is doing, people always want to talk about the Constitution and these different things. Understand that the First Amendment is not there to protect popular speech. It is there to protect unpopular speech, the dissenting voices, if you will. You know, who was it? Thomas Jefferson, in all of his slave-owning, slave-raping greatness, said dissension is the greatest form of patriotism. So if we want to use the example of him for white America, the slave-owning rapist, who liked to impregnate his slaves, see Sally Hemings, is a historical fact. If we go off of what he said, dissension is the greatest form of patriotism, then Colin Kaepernick is a true blue fucking red, white, and blue American patriot. And for anybody to sit there, Fox News, and the idiots on Fox News, and other far-right sites in particular, to sit there and say that he's un-American or he's unpatriotic. If anything, if you want to always talk that shit bullshit about the Founding Fathers, Thomas Jefferson saying dissension is the greatest form of patriotism, and they put in things like the First Amendment to protect things like unpopular speech, like what Colin Kaepernick is doing. He is more patriotic than any of you fucks could ever imagine to be. On top of that, from Colin Kaepernick's standpoint, why would you love a country and a flag that doesn't love you? It doesn't matter if Barack Obama is in the White House. Think about all the dirty, racist shit, frankly, that has been said about him the past 8 years. Think about some of the hatred that is out there. There was not nearly the same hatred of Bill Clinton in the 90s as there is for Barack Hussein Obama now. And we know why there is more hatred for Barack Obama than there is Bill Clinton. Don't be fucking naive about this. At the end of the day, though, why would a black man like Colin Kaepernick sit there and love a country that doesn't love him? Sure, it's provided him the opportunity to play football and rip off the 49ers of a bunch of money. So in some ways, hey, you could say he's just like an American CEO. He's getting paid a bunch of money and he sucks at his goddamn job. But really, it doesn't change the fact that if he goes in his nice car with his money, and he's playing his music, and all of a sudden he goes driving through an all-white neighborhood, it doesn't mean that the racial profiling is going to stop, because all of a sudden, oh, he's a Negro with money, he's got to be a drug dealer or a pimp, or he had to steal the fucking shit somehow. At the end of the day, in this country, especially when we talk about the police system, it doesn't matter if you're a black man with money or not, you're still a black man, and that's a fact, Jack. And if that's uncomfortable for white America to deal with, that's just tough shit. Try living the life of a black man and see how you'd feel after that. On top of that, when we talk about the national anthem, looking past the flag and all of that, it's represented in terms of its oppressing and murdering of colored peoples and overthrowing democratically elected regimes to impose our own dictatorships around the world. See Iran and other places that are more U.S. friendly. You're talking about the national anthem, the Star-Spangled Banner, that was written by Francis Scott Key from Maryland, who, by the way, was a slave-owning white separatist. So the thing that people are pissed off that Colin Kaepernick doesn't stand up for was written by a slave-owning white separatist. Part of Francis Scott Key's whole work, talking about, fighting against slavery, was so that he can ship the slaves back to Africa. This is this American white paintbrush revisionist history bullshit that puts them in the category of Abraham Lincoln. We pretend these guys to be great because we feel guilty about just how terrible and shitty our history truly is. He was a slave owner. He was a white separatist. He wanted to ship the black man and woman back to Africa. Same shit Abraham Lincoln wanted to do until he had an epiphany late in his life around Civil War time. This is no hero. So this type of guy, in all of his flaws, writes this anthem, and now we expect black men like Colin Kaepernick to stand up for it? Why the fuck would he? When you look at this country's history, its present, and unfortunately its future, it's not easy to see why so many black men and women and other people of non-white European colors would sit there and be angry about what this country represents and dislike what this country has done to its people. All of these people that are supposed to be given equal protections under the law, and they clearly are not. And you look at the 2016 presidential race, your two primary candidates are somebody in Hillary Clinton that if you or I did that, we're in prison. Can't get right. Always wrong. Only to flip-flop and get on the right side about 2 years too damn late. That's Hillary Clinton's political career in a fucking nutshell. Versus Donald Trump, an overt racist and sexist. I mean, these are the two primary choices. Like, how could you feel happy about voting for either one of these fucks? What the fuck, if you're a black man or woman or a Hispanic woman or your Middle Eastern descent, why the fuck would you vote for Donald Trump? And on a similar wavelength, why the fuck would you vote for Hillary Clinton? And these are the two choices that they have to make. The two primary choices. Unless they educate themselves and they go look up a Gary Johnson or a Jill Stein or they vote for Mickey Mouse, all of whom are far more qualified candidates. These are the two primary choices that the country and the media are going to feed them. No wonder a black man like Colin Kaepernick might be a little upset about the way things are going in this country today. And you look at, again, the racial profiling that goes on in the police and criminal justice system, the violence towards blacks. While I talk about sometimes the sensationalism of every time a black man is killed by the cops and he's unarmed, it becomes this big, huge story. And it is a big, huge story. But let's not overlook the 10 or 15 other instances of crime where a black man kills another black man. This is still killing far more black men than the police could ever hope to. But when you look at the bigger picture beyond that, and when you look at the quality of lives of many black and even non-black other minorities in this country, you can say it's slowly killing them day to day. The chemicals that are put in our food, the fact that a black man is going to be more likely to be arrested for a drug offense, even though a lot more white people in a greater sense, not in a per capita sense, but in an overall number, are going to be actually selling and doing the drugs. When you look at the length of sentences for black offenders versus white offenders, when you look at so many damn things, you could argue that this country is slowly trying to kill off its non-white European citizens, because it is. Because it is. You know, our private for-profit prison system is built on the incarceration of the young black male, and that's a fact. That's a fact. So when you look at all of this, frankly, how could you not agree with Colin Kaepernick? How could you not stand with him in this protest? You know, all these far-right people and Fox News and everybody want to get all their panties in a bunch. They had to feel pretty fucking stupid when the hashtag Veterans for Kaepernick started trending a while back. You know, black soldiers talk about I was black before I went into the military. I'm black after I got out. And there's still these problems. You have all these white soldiers who are saying, you know, he's got the right to do this. You can sit there and cite this thing of fighting for our freedoms, but when a guy is exercising those freedoms that you claim that the military is currently fraudulently fighting for, you get all upset about it. No, he has the right to do it, and in a lot of ways, he's absolutely right to do it. Now, I wish he was better at his job because it would mean more. It would carry so much more weight. I think maybe initially his message could have been a little more concentrated. It's like what happened kind of with Occupy Wall Street. The original premise was good, but too many other things started to get into play, weren't looking at the bigger picture, and it ended up losing steam, and nothing fucking happened. Nothing changed. So I'm with Colin Kaepernick on this 100%. I stand by his right to do this. Furthermore, I stand by the fundamental message that he's trying to get across. And I hope that more black athletes in the National Football League and across other sports decide to join him and do the same damn thing. Because when you look at the history of this country, when you look at the history of what the flag represents, and in particular when you look at the history of the Star-Spangled Banner and the flag that it represents, and the man who wrote it and what he represented, why the fuck would anybody that's not white actually stand up for that piece of shit? Why would they? So I hope he continues to do it. Yes, it's going to be selfish. Yes, it's going to be a distraction. Yes, in some ways it can be viewed as disrespecting dead black soldiers. But it has to be done. And the more people that take the courage to join up with this, the more this message gets across, and the more it becomes not just a Colin Kaepernick distraction, it becomes more of an overall distraction, which is a real positive thing and brings up an important narrative, an important discussion at a critically important time in our country. Unfortunately, with that said, with the way white America has structured this country over the past 240 years, there are so many layers of white defense and white privilege in there. And again, these are facts. These are. I don't have to quantify them. I shouldn't have to spell them out tangibly for you. It should be easily understood. At the end of the day, there are so many layers of white protection and white privilege built into the system that the genius of the white European in this country for 240 years is that the only way anything ever ultimately changes is as if the white man decides that it has to happen. You could talk about Malcolm X. You could talk about Dr. Martin Luther King and all of this and all that they stood for and all that they protested. At the end of the day, if it wasn't JFK and then later on, more importantly, LBJ, getting these civil rights acts and social reforms passed through, they don't happen. Barack Obama doesn't become president if enough white Americans aren't ultimately on board. Even if an overwhelming majority of black voters and Hispanic voters voted for him, he still had to get a certain percentage of the right type of white America to get on board with him in order for him to get where he wanted to get. That's the evil and the genius at the same time of what white America has done, the system that is in place. You could have Colin Kaepernick, LeBron James, Michael Jordan, and thousands of other black athletes and influential black figures in this country and all throughout the world chime in and join up and protest something that is valid, protest something that should be protested, refuse to stand for something that they really shouldn't stand for. Refuse to allow something that they shouldn't have to allow. But until more of white America gets on board, and until more of white America takes that message and runs with it, it's all going to be one gigantic circle jerk and waste of time. Nothing's going to fucking change. So if anything, the flaw in Colin Kaepernick and his decision of what he did was the approach. He kind of, I think, took it on his own and did it himself. And again, I'm with him on it. I understand why. I don't disagree with him. Because for so many reasons, he's fucking right. But now is the opportunity and time to take a step back and say, hey, I need to get other people on board. If you start getting some of the white guys in the NFL and in the NBA and in Major League Baseball to take a similar type of stand, then potentially some progress can be made. Then the issue can really be taken to a whole different level. Because up until now and going forward, until unfortunately that happens, it's going to be much ado about nothing. It's going to be all this fuss about many valid things, and sadly, nothing is going to change. So for all the people that are pissed off about Colin Kaepernick and what he's done, okay, tough shit. He has the right to do it, and the fact is he is right. And if you were in his position as a young black man, with all the stuff that I've talked about in this video, why the fuck would you ever stand up for the Star-Spangled Banner? Why the fuck would you ever stand up and salute that goddamn flag? Just think about that. I just hope Colin Kaepernick does a better job of networking, getting more people involved. I hope other athletes have the courage to join up in this cause. And I hope ultimately that he plays better, because if he doesn't play better, again, this is going to be one big circle jerk and it'll all be for naught.